Welcome back to Ensuring Success 2021. We're so glad you could join us today. This particular session is on sales tax in the 21st century accounting practice. Before we get started, though, I'd like to first of all thank all of you for sharing your time with us today. It's amazing that you're here. We are so grateful to you. And I would like to take a moment to run through a quick list of our sponsors who make this event possible. If it were not for the sponsors, we would not be here, so nor would you. So we're really happy to have all of our sponsors here. And I want to bring up their list really quickly, which I'm trying to do right here. Okay, I think I can see it right here. Okay, so our sponsors for this event, who I'd like to thank, include ADP, Ace Cloud Hosting, CPA Charge, Avalara, BotKeeper, ComplyRight, CorePay, CoreV, Sage, SureLink, TaxFile, CPA.com, eFile for Biz, Intuit, Vic AI, Walters Kluwer, Xero, QX Global, Right Networks, and SafeSend Returns. Thank you all for making this event possible. And then secondly, I'd also like to thank Avalara, who you may have been able to tell by the set here, who is sponsoring this session. And give you, for those who are just joining us, just give you a brief overview of how we will issue CPE credits for this session. The CPE is available for those who attend the full session. At 3 intervals during the session, we will provide you with a 3-digit code that will appear on the bottom of your screen. I will call attention to it. You'll need to write down that code. And so you'll have 3 3-digit codes by the end of the session. After this event is over, you can go to the EnsuringSuccess.com homepage, click the Get My CPE option at the top of the screen, and then enter the codes you've collected for all the sessions you attended and download your CPE certificates. So that's how that works. Also, I'd like to just mention that if you scroll down on your screen under the video window, you'll see a button that says Ask a Question. So if you have any questions either for our speakers or for us in general at Ensuring Success, please enter it there, and we will try to get to as many questions to our speakers as possible. We'll certainly answer any technical questions that you have on the spot. One other thing, look in your email in the next week or so for a message from CPA Practice Advisor. We will be sending you offers and information from the sponsors for this event in what we're calling a digital tote bag. So take a look for that. It should be there within the week. And right now, I would like to introduce our speakers for today's session. We have next to me Sona Akmakjian, Jason Parr, Keela Ross, and Alexandra DeFelice. I'd like them each to introduce themselves briefly.
Hi, Gil. It's great to be here. My name is Sona Akmakjian, and I am the Senior Director responsible for accounting partnerships at Avalara. And I am a CPA, California CPA, and also a professional that works with accountants. My job is to really support our accounting partners here at Avalara. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Keela Ross. I work in Dallas, Texas. I've lived here my whole life. I'm a SALT director with the company Whipley, and I run the sales and use tax practice and unclaimed property practice at a national level.
Thanks, Keela.
Hey, I'm Jason Parr. I'm the president and CEO of Peisner Johnson. We help companies gain peace of mind when it comes to sales tax. I've been with them for 25 years, and I'm based here in Dallas.
And I'm Alexandra DeFelice, Director of Marketing and Business Development for Payne & Fears lawyer firm in Orange County, California, today posing as an Avalara advertisement and co-hosting with Gail Perry.
All right, thanks everyone. So we are talking about sales tax in the current modern day accounting firm, and sales tax has become really front and center in the past few years due to the Wayfair legislation, which seems to have gotten everyone's attention. So what I'd like to do is start by just, if you guys could give us just a brief wrap-up of what Wayfair is and why it has impacted the accounting profession in such a profound way.
Definitely here at Avalara, we see it, Gail. Wayfair has really transformed the industry, and I feel like every time the authorities try to simplify something, they end up complicating it. So Wayfair has really been a game changer for the industry, and certainly for us as software providers. What it has done is really created economic nexus for a lot of our clients. So historically, people had to register and collect sales tax in states where they had a physical presence, but now if you're selling into a jurisdiction, you have to really comply in that jurisdiction as well.
Yeah, it changed the nexus rules altogether, right? So physical nexus has always been where you're located, physically, where you conduct business. And Wayfair, essentially, with Economic Nexus, has shifted that to wherever your customers are located. So it greatly expands the requirement for companies to be registered and compliant with multiple states, where maybe they've only been dealing in one state for years or decades.
And just to add to that, as a consulting firm, we had to learn real fast the rules and the changes that have happened. So, there was a lot of learning and education going on as it relates to how we can support our clients best as it relates going through the Wayfair.
And I feel the pandemic accelerated e-commerce, which really accelerated the reporting responsibility for a lot of our clients and companies out there, too.
Yeah, no doubt. In the last 2 years, companies needing to be registered in more states and compliant in more states, understanding the tax laws in more states has been exponential. So it's really huge, and it's only been 3 years, right? We say, okay, Wayfair is 1 year old, it's 2 years old, it's 3 years old, but even at 3 years old, and as much information that's out there, there's still a very low response to compliance in every state that you might need to be registered in.
And do we have stats on how low that response is? It seems to me I've heard it's a really large number of companies who just aren't complying because probably they don't know they should.
Yeah. At Avalara, we did a study in 2021 through CPA trend lines, and it was a study where we interviewed more than 500 accountants, bookkeepers, enrolled agents, and what we learned is that accountants feel 95% of their small clients are not fully compliant with Wayfair. Wow. That is a very high percentage.
It's a huge number. I would almost, obviously I'm not going to debunk the study, but I'd almost go 100% of companies doing business in the U.S. probably need to register in at least one more jurisdiction, more likely several more jurisdictions.
Okay, so we want to figure out from the audience how familiar they are with Wayfair. So there will be a poll. Again, it's at the bottom. If you don't see it, just refresh your screen and just type in your name. We got this from you guys, by the way. What's your knowledge of Wayfair? Isn't that a furniture store? It gives me nightmares. I know enough to be dangerous, or I help my clients regularly. So we'll just see what the results pop
Awesome.
in there.
That's a great poll. That is a great poll.
Make it fun.
Yep.
So it seems like this is presenting a number of challenges in the way we deal with our clients, and a lot of accounting firms, I think, traditionally have stayed away from sales tax because they looked at it as not a great profit leader in their firm, because it's low-level taxes. I don't want to mess with it, and now it seems like it's kind of an opportunity for accounting firms to get in on this. What are you guys seeing?
I think with CPA firms and accounting firms specifically, you're considered the trusted advisor, so you need to have some level of knowledge about what Wayfair means. You might not know the answer to these questions, but you need to know that these are the 3 questions that need to be answered by all of your clients. Number 1, do I have Nexus? And that's a question regarding every state. So you need to learn, do I have Nexus? Number 2, is what I sell taxable? Right? Because you could have Nexus and a responsibility to register, but what you sell is not taxable. So do I have Nexus? Is what I sell taxable? And then number 3, how do I sell my products or services? So along with economic nexus legislation that's come through, there's also marketplace facilitator legislation that seems to follow in every state that passes economic legislation. And essentially what that means is if you sell on a marketplace platform, the platform has a responsibility to collect and remit the tax. Some sellers or taxpayers feel like, well, if I sell on a platform, then I have no responsibility. But if you sell on a website or through other traditional forms or formats, in addition to a platform, or you don't sell on a platform and you sell in other ways, then how you sell your product might make you the responsible person. So Nexus, taxability, how do I sell what I sell? That helps me understand, do I have a sales tax responsibility in each state? So again, a CPA or accounting firm doesn't need to be able to answer that necessarily, but they need to know those are the three most important questions.
Right. And I also think as a CPA firm, we have a responsibility to our clients to somewhat advise them. So being proactive in what's happening right now is a plus. Having a process ready to go to be able to answer these questions, guiding the client on what to do next and what to look for, answering those three questions would benefit them way more than the reactive situation that I've seen going on. So having to get them, to get compliant after they've already hit it has cost them time, resources, and even tax dollars that they'd have to pay out when they should not have had to begin with. So
some sellers will say, do I really need to pay attention? And some CPA and accounting firms will say, do we really need to pay attention? But it really is the most costly mistake is to ignore this legislation. It's on the books. Following any legislation is going to be a period of time where then the state begins enforcement of that legislation, going back and trying to identify individuals who did not comply at the right time or who aren't compliant yet. And if it comes out of your own pocket with penalties and interest, it can work heavy against your margins. And so it's better to be compliant and be collecting the tax from a willing customer who's willing to pay it.
And it doesn't have to be a bottom line impact to you if you do it right. And if you do it proactively, it's just a pass through. You collect and remit. But if you don't collect, you're still liable for remitting.
Yep.
And it comes right out of your bottom line.
Yep, it sure does. Biggest tragedy in sales tax.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about dealing with states when we come back, but we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor, Avalara, and then when we return, we'll show you your first CPE code of the day. So stay tuned. Oh, okay. There was no break. Sorry. No word from our sponsor at this moment, but we are going to show you just the CPE code, which should be appearing on the bottom of your screen right now. Thank you. This is the first CPE code of this session. There will be two more. So be sure to write this down if you're going to collect CPE for this session. So
I do have the poll results if you guys are interested.
Let's hear about Wayfair.
52% know enough to be dangerous, which is very scary, okay? And then 19% actually said, isn't that a furniture store? I don't know if they were kidding or that's really what they think. I mean, it is a furniture store, but 15%, it gives me nightmares, and 12%, I help my clients regularly. So there are a handful, but that definitely opens the door to how, where they can be getting help, how they can be getting help. And by the way, Jason, someone did ask if you can repeat those three questions one more time, and then I know Gail had another question.
I was just going to say, if you know enough to be dangerous, now you know the three questions that need to be answered. Again, you don't need to answer them, but you need to know what the questions are. Do I have Nexus? Is what I sell taxable? And how do I sell my products? Answers to those three questions, state by state, will help you understand whether you have a responsibility when it comes to sales tax.
So they need to answer that for themselves, and then they need to tell their clients to look out for that, and then go to you guys?
It's really the question that their client needs to be able to answer. And it's the question that the CPA needs to be able to ask their client and then work with other individuals to potentially find an answer. As far as it gives me nightmares, you would be surprised how many people can't sleep well at night because of sales tax. And so if we like to say that confidence builds collaboration. So if you could just take some time to talk with someone because you're not quite sure what you should be doing, that collaboration with other individuals can help you gain confidence on what to do next. And then you can have some peace of mind and sleep better at night.
Well, and am I wrong? I was going to ask you this, Sona. Aren't the authorities kind of lenient if you're forthcoming and say I messed up versus going, oh shoot, I messed up, I'm kind of hide under the table here. You just kind of say I kind of messed up and what can I do? Are they a little bit more lenient with you in that case, or are you in trouble no matter what?
I think that yes, right? And the sooner you come forward, the smaller the impact. The longer you wait, the more the exposure becomes and the more difficult it becomes. So definitely being proactive helps. But regardless, government authorities, they know you owe this money and they know you need to turn it in. So is there a leniency? It can be if you go through voluntary disclosure.
Yeah.
Some states have programs around that. And that's where consultants like Peisner and Keela's organization can help with. But, just to talk about your 3 questions, Jason, even if companies know what they need to do, doing what they need to do has become really difficult with Wayfair. You can have a retailer that was, used to filing returns in a single state. What Wayfair has done is said, okay, now you need to file in 20 states. And each state has different rates, different taxability, different reporting structures. So they know what they need to do, but how do they do it? Because when you're in one state, it's easy to do it manually. You just log into the state's website,
Right.
fill out the form, and submit it. But now with 20, 30, how do you manage that manually?
That's what we see, yeah. There are remedies. There are programs to help you mitigate what might be due. And so that's why we say the most costly mistake you can make is to ignore it, because it doesn't stop adding up month to month
Right.
to month if you haven't taken the responsibility to comply. But there are ways to mitigate what comes out of your pocket
So
if
what
you
would
come
that-
forward to the state
Okay.
voluntarily.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
States
programs.
have programs, some states.
Yeah.
So what kind of experiences have you had in terms of taking a client who, say, has not been compliant and was either intentionally or unintentionally ignorant of the fact that sales tax was growing and owing in several states? Where do you start and how do you help that client?
Well, I know for us, we had one recently and he was losing sleep. I think he said for months, he was losing sleep and he kind of felt like he knew what he had to do, but didn't know how to get there. So us putting in place a process for him, ready to go, was easy for him to understand, but then also guiding him, helping him work through that, filing the voluntary disclosures, giving him the rules, because each state has different rules. So just making sure to lay it all out just made it easier for him to make that happen. Granted, if you have to go back a year and have to come up with that sales tax liability, he wasn't happy about that, but at least he knew what to accrue going forward. So, and then knowing to kind of turn off that faucet to make it better going forward, he felt a little bit better and he could sleep. But he was not having a fun day or a fun time.
We do see companies that have 7, 8, 9-figure exposure because they have not looked at it. CPAs and accountants should know that there's companies out there, potential clients, that if they're not complying with economic nexus, physical nexus, that the exposure can be really big. A lot of the ways you help mitigate that is just helping people understand, again, answer those 3 questions and then understand, how do I comply, with a combination of potentially registering where there may not be material exposure, and then working through amnesty or voluntary disclosure programs to help either limit the look back, how far back the state looks. Sometimes they will waive penalties, sometimes they'll waive interest or part of the interest. And so utilizing those remedies, there's no way around it without doing somewhat of a risk analysis by state to understand what your exposure might be in a particular state. Because the answer might be just get registered and turn on the tax, so to speak, and begin collecting on taxable items that you sell. Or it could be, we need to turn on the tax, but we need to reach the state in an anonymous way through a voluntary approach to try to get access to the benefits that they offer through those programs to just help reduce the amount of out-of-pocket money. We've taken 7-figure exposure down to thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. There's a way to do it, but you need to talk to somebody and work through that process.
Right.
Well, and I think, Keela, when we were preparing for this session, you were saying people just get nervous. They see that they have to pay and they freak out, right? So how do you kind of coach them through it and say, you need to come forward, it's in your best interest, you know?
Right. It's really explaining what is owed versus the potential bad. So being able to explain it, showing it to them, it's okay, we're going to get you through this, helping them, holding their hand, getting through it, being able to mitigate it, work with the states. They feel better that they've got the guidance to get through this program, but then also kind of laying it out them, the exposure, the risk exposure, that if you do this now, this is what you're owing. But if you do this 2 years from now or get caught,
That looks a lot worse.
it looks horrible. So it's a matter of, most people are pretty practical when it comes to money, and they're just, yeah, I see where you're coming from. What can we do this? How can we get this going? Let's stop the bleeding in a way. So,
Well said.
So isn't there a discussion with your clients about the concept of collecting sales tax? Because honestly, it's not really their, I mean, they're the ones on the line who have to pay it, but it's technically the liability of the person buying the product or the service. But when you haven't been collecting, then there's really no way to go back, is there, and recoup?
it's tough.
difficult.
It's tough.
But most people don't want to go back to a customer they didn't collect tax from and say, I should have collected tax from you. From an e-commerce standpoint, it's almost impossible. From a traditional brick and mortar approach with fewer customers but larger purchases, you can usually work out some details there, but it's a much more difficult process to collect after, and mostly unheard of because people just don't want to offend their customers by taxing them a year or 2 years after they sold a product to them.
And, having been an auditor in my previous life, you would find that they're not even in business anymore. How do you even track them down? That is also, you can choose to go back, but are they even there is another question.
Yeah, that's for sure.
All right, a bunch of questions just came in. Get ready.
Awesome.
First question. Utah has threatened to collect sales tax from accountants. Would that open the door for out-of-state clients paying sales tax too?
So again, that second question on taxability, if your service or product is taxable in that state and you have exceeded the economic threshold of that state, then quite possibly you would need to be collecting tax on your services if that's the case.
Okay. And then, is there any evidence that Congress will create a threshold to eliminate small companies? For example, sales under $5 million are exempt. The feds need to address this state greed. Sorry, that was a comment, not a question, but it's not mine, from the audience. Who wants to take that?
I think they tried to do that, right, with the thresholds. But what happened is they were trying to make it simpler. But what happens is that every state tries to do that, and everyone has a different threshold. It just becomes a compliance nightmare. The intention was to simplify it, but it wasn't done at a national level. It was done at a state level, and it created an even bigger burden. I don't know if that's kind of what you guys are seeing out there.
I would not put any guarantees in Congress doing anything to resolve this situation. The states are so autonomous on sales tax and their laws, and essentially the pendulum swings between government and taxpayer over time. And what you saw with Wayfair specifically is once the Supreme Court said a state could tax based on this threshold, almost every state copied the threshold. Some of the larger states expanded that threshold to try to protect some of those smaller businesses and companies. But the lowest one that's out there is $500,000. I can't imagine, I can't see Congress acting on just about anything, much less this situation. So.
Okay, and then again, you gave those three questions, so now everyone's asking about these questions again. With the third question, he says, explain the meaning of the third question. And then secondly, wouldn't the CPA have to explain Nexus to clients? And isn't that the tricky part anyway?
It can be the tricky part, but you do have what I call DIY or automated solutions like Avalara who can provide a list of the thresholds. Because we're talking about economic thresholds. A lot of states are doing away with the transactional threshold. So you're really looking at the sales volume of a company into a particular state based on a chart of those thresholds. So identifying Nexus from an economic standpoint, fairly straightforward. Taxability, that's going to be a little more difficult because every state has a different tax law. But there's great research tools that can provide charts on revenue streams that allow you to understand what taxability might be on particular products or services. But that third question, the reason that one's important, if I have Nexus and what I sell is taxable in a given state, and everything I sell is sold on Amazon, because of legislation, Amazon is the required party to collect and remit that tax.
But if it's on your own website.
But if it's on your own website, brick and mortar, other forms outside of a marketplace platform, then I have the responsibility. And so that's why that third question is so important, to determine whether you have the responsibility to collect.
Well, and that's an interesting thing. It came up a few years ago when someone was saying they got like a huge fine because they suddenly put on their website, like, look, we can sell to any state. And they like put pictures of all the states, and the governments are like, yeah, guess what? We want your money. So like, is there some advice you could give to people to avoid that exposure?
I mean, from my perspective, the best advice is just be compliant. There's a lot of software solutions out there like Avalara that can really make this process easy for you to collect and remit those taxes. So it's almost better to implement a solution like that and not have to worry about it. You can focus on what's really important, which is growing your business and selling more, knowing that you have automation in place that's going to take care of everything for you.
What I see with Wayfair in particular and Economic Nexus is the cost of non-compliance far outweighs, 100 times outweighs the cost of compliance. There's a lot of automated tools out there that can help a company focus on what they do to grow and manage the sales tax compliance aspect of what they're trying to do, and trying to avoid compliance when the law is so straightforward can really put them in a costly bind. So it's better to comply than not to comply.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsor, and when we return, we will show the second CPE code for this session.
From Anchorage, Alaska to Zellwood, Florida, Australia to Zambia, your clients have customers everywhere, and they're growing. But think about all those countries, states, cities, and municipalities. Each one has its own business licenses, tax rates, rules, and regulations. It's overwhelming. And to make it even more challenging, those rates and regulations constantly change. So how will you help your clients stay on top of this complexity with the resources you have? Avalara has the answer. Purpose-built for accounting practices, Avalara for Accountants is a portfolio of solutions that helps you automate sales and use tax compliance tasks, manage multiple preparers, increase your efficiency, reduce risk, and improve accuracy as well as client satisfaction. Here's what Avalara for Accountants enables you to do. Automate the tax prep and filing process from end to end while maintaining accuracy and control. And if your people are already maxed out, you can outsource the filing work after you get the final sign-off. Be the trusted expert and advisor to your clients. We offer easy to find and understand answers to tax questions. It includes simple explanations and access to the rates, regulations, and other information buried on government websites. Help your clients reduce risk and liability by researching, acquiring, and renewing the business licenses, registrations, and permits they need to do business. You'll build client confidence by ensuring they're compliant with an ever-increasing amount of business license requirements. And as your needs change, and as all those tax rates and regulations change, Avalara for Accountants will be there with new solutions and support to help you grow your firm and serve your clients. Tax compliance may be one part of your business or a service you're looking to offer, but it's our specialty. That's why Avalara is the choice of tens of thousands of customers worldwide. No matter the size and scale of your firm or your clients, we're your partner, and we're invested in your long-term success. Try Avalara for Accountants today and see the benefits add up right before your eyes.
We are back, and we are displaying the second CPE code for this session on the bottom of the screen. So be sure to write this code down if you expect to request CPE credit for this session. So I think what we want to do is get into talking about accounting firms and their relationship with their clients in a sales tax world. So first of all, what holds accounting firms back from wanting to provide service in the area of sales tax, because I don't know of any accounting firms that say, "Oh, I don't want to do income taxes," because for whatever reason. But a lot of firms balk when it seems time to talk about are they going to provide sales tax services. So what are the barriers, first of all, to firms getting involved?
We work with accounting firms quite a bit, Gail, and what we find is that it's expertise and it's comfort level. And previously, it's been okay for them to say, we're not focused on sales and use tax. But for all the reasons we've been discussing with Wayfair, it's really hard for them to do that anymore. So their clients are looking at them, as Jason said, as trusted advisors to provide these services. So saying we can't help you is no longer an option. They're looking for a single provider that can guide them from A to Z, and sales and use taxes is one of them. So, even accounting firms are looking for technology. How do I become an expert at something that I am not today, leveraging technology, efficiency, and automation to be able to provide those services? So that's kind of what we've been finding.
Yeah.
I know another barrier that I see in some of the smaller firms is that the laws change all the time, all the time. And to be able to keep up with that on your own without a technology source or a research engine, it would be very difficult to be able to become an expert quickly. So having something available to them to be able to quickly look at something would be very helpful. But the laws change, even for us as a bigger firm. We sometimes have to go in and do a bunch of research to say, okay, what changed this month or what changed this year, for us to be able to relay it out. But, the bigger firms sometimes will provide that information. So if you're a smaller one, it's easier to look sometimes at the bigger brother to see what's going on, to get some technology in place to help them further.
Because that's your job, right? That's your primary responsibility in your firm, right? Let alone like someone that's got to wear. Now we're telling them they have to be the security guy, they have to be the salt specialist. Like we'll probably tell them they have to be the Bitcoin operator or whatever, So it's just like it's so much. But as we were saying at the earlier session, this is a community of people that do want to help each other, and it's not really your competition. It's just they want to help everyone succeed. So.
And it's the same thing that Sona said earlier, right? If you have one company that's in one state and they're manually preparing the return and filing that return, that's one thing. But now, if you need to be registered and compliant in 20 states or 30 states, it's a lot more complex and it's a little bit overwhelming. So a CPA or accounting firm might have a client in one state and they might have some questions if they have an issue or a problem in another state. And so it's simple enough to do some research on one state, understand their laws, their Nexus guidelines, and how to consult a client. But they have the same problem that the company that was in one state. Now they have clients that need to be in 30, 40 states. Mm-hmm. And understanding the tax laws across multiple states is nearly impossible if you do it from a manual research process. That's why tools to help automate and give some guidance can really be helpful in this situation.
It used to be all manual. I was a salt accountant ages ago when everything was manual, and trying to keep up on the laws for all the states, or I think I had clients in like half the states in the country, and even then that were changing constantly. It was a full-time job.
So when I started in practice, we didn't have the internet, right? Mm-hmm.
But you had those books in the library where you changed the pages every week.
But there were these binders with these very thin pieces of paper. It was my job to, every time they came in the mail, to take out the old law that had changed and put in the new law.
Right.
And you could be fired if those were out of place. Yeah. You had to make sure they were in place. So internet search obviously is better than binder search, but research through a research tool that gives back the answers without you having to actually dig in and learn how to research is a real game changer for accountants across the board.
And it's not just accuracy, it's efficiency. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do I get to the right answer, but how do I get to the right answer quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think technology has made things way faster. Mm-hmm. What would take you probably 20 years ago.
Maybe 25.
Maybe 8 hours to do, we might be able to look up and have that time for sure.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So for those of you, since you guys do know a lot about this, what has stumped you in the last year or so where you've gone, oh my God, like I don't even know how to deal with this question, and you have to go to your other resources? What are things becoming easier or trickier?
So when you get the government involved, to simplify, it gets more complex. But I honestly have to tell you, I haven't seen, and I think CPAs and accountants can take some peace of mind or some relief from this. I haven't seen a stump situation, right? There's usually an answer that you can come to. If you're unsure on taxability, for instance, and you're not sure how to navigate that for your client, and you have the ability to collect tax, then we're usually conservative. Unless we can prove through the law that it's not taxable, then you should probably collect tax. Sometimes things are exempt by the way your customer uses them. But you collect tax unless they provide you a certificate or something, right? Because under audit, they're going to look at those collections. And so when it comes to compliance, it's not really something that stumps the industry. It's just a matter of adopting automation and technology to be able to manage the constant approach. So it can be overwhelming, but I haven't seen anything that we can't answer and we can't remedy through these processes of understanding what someone's compliance responsibility is.
Yeah, it's well said.
So big firms like Wipfli and the Big Four and the top 100 firms probably have sales tax people on board. And then there are firms like Pisner Johnson that they're the sales tax firm. That's what they do. But what about the smaller accounting firms that are thinking, well, maybe it's time for us to make that part of our practice? What are the steps involved that they need to follow to add sales tax services to their practice? Where do they start?
Well, I think automation, right, is the way to start. There's a lot of service providers out there that are scaling the solutions and technology to make it affordable for the small players. So, it's SaaS, it's cloud, so it's modifiable to the segment that the practitioner's in. So I think automation and technology and tools out there will make them experts in areas that they're not. And so there's a lot of options for them around leveraging automation.
No doubt. Also, I think in the world we're in today, like in the last couple of years, you've seen an enormous amount of mergers and acquisitions of companies looking at other companies that really complement what they do and acquiring. A small firm doesn't need to necessarily acquire a sales tax professional or even acquire another company to be able to offer SALT services. There are so many out there that you can partner with and talk with. And again, we say collaboration builds confidence. So if you could just get a network of individuals that you can connect with and collaborate with, that'll give you a lot of confidence in what to do next as a small accounting firm. And there's also educational groups and entities out there that can teach you a lot about how to actually run a SALT practice. So there are options out there for smaller accounting firms that maybe haven't seen this and a little bit timid about jumping into it. It's not as scary as you think.
There's also accounting alliances, which brings a group of practitioners together with different expertise. There's a lot of them in the industry that they can partner with and become a member to really give them that network and the support to be able to start a practice.
Yeah, it's true.
You guys aren't going to like this question.
I love questions.
I'm not going to direct it to anyone. You guys can shoot for who wants to answer this. I think it's a loaded question. Why not just collect sales tax on everything if the customer can't figure out if it's taxable?
There's a good answer for that.
Yeah, for them, you can do that, right? You can leverage technology, which will decide whether something is taxable or exempt in a jurisdiction. So you don't necessarily need to tax everything. You just need to leverage technology that can help you make the right decision. But if you're going to choose to do that, you are now at a competitive disadvantage because your competitors selling the same widgets in that jurisdiction are going to charge 7 to 10% less. So you really have to think about that as well.
There's a big reason why you don't collect tax on everything. And specifically in the world we're in, it's class action lawsuit, right? You would think, we're talking a lot about don't under collect. So you want to make sure that you're collecting. But you want to be careful that you don't over-collect, because if you do over-collect, not only could you have an unhappy customer that knows that they shouldn't be taxed, and you're going to be increasing your customer service department to manage all of the angry calls, but if the state gets involved, or worse, if a group of attorneys get involved and recognize that that's your approach, then you could have a class action lawsuit on your hands, which could actually put you out of business.
Sounds like a good reason not to do it to me.
I don't recommend it. We never do recommend that.
So if you're building this practice and you've decided on some technology solutions to help you, the next step is presumably to get some clients, right? So how do you find, how do you scour your own client base or go further? How do you find clients who are going to need this service?
I think in more cases, the client is probably pushing you to do it. Okay. So the clients might already be there. And then, of course, in our world, it's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of putting out articles or blogs of, go-to that people can look up, research, do the marketing to get there. So definitely word of mouth marketing, but I really think your clients kind of push you that way to become experts when maybe you weren't looking to be an expert, but somehow automatically you are now.
It's really true. It's a windfall marketplace because of Wayfair. Again, I would say maybe 100% of every company that does business in the U.S. Probably needs to register in at least one more jurisdiction, right? And so because of that, every company is looking for solutions. So there's an abundance of opportunity out there as it relates to sales and use tax, for sure.
At what point in your firm do you have enough of this type of work that you need to have somebody doing it, devoted to it?
Well, I know for us, consulting is one thing. So if you had a couple of clients in and you're doing it, but when you get to the compliance part of it and you have to file in multiple jurisdictions, multiple states, Lord, Louisiana, where you're in filing in cities and now and stuff, parishes, is when you would bring on, So I would say you would need to look at the hours you're spending and the work that you're doing, and of course, the influx of business that's coming in, right? So is when you would need to make that judgment call.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I think if you're doing advisory, you could do that quite a bit without having to bring someone on. If you're going to get involved in the compliance side and you're going to develop compliance, then you're going to bring in a technology provider like Avalara or others who can automate that process. But that process, when I tell someone I'm a state and local tax consultant, they inevitably talk to me about tax season. Which is a couple of times during the year, right? Because those that filed on time and those that extended and filed on time again, we have it every month, right? So our tax season is the middle 2 weeks of every month because you've got to collect all of the transactional data and you've got to get it on a return filed with payment in most states by the 20th. And the filing frequencies are mostly monthly. They could be quarterly. And so your tax season is every month. So you might want to have someone who can begin managing that relationship with your automated solution and also managing that relationship with the clients that you do that for as well.
We're going to place the third CPE code for this session on the bottom of our screen right now, so be sure to write down that code. Keep track of that if you're going to get CPE for this session. I think it hasn't appeared yet, but it's about to. It's coming. Okay. All right, we're having a technical issue. We will not leave you without giving you that third CPE code. But back to that in a moment. So say you've started your sales tax practice and you've decided on a software solution. You're working with your current clients and helping them, and you're kind of getting into that and think this is a pretty good way to enhance my practice. How do you market that, or how do you go about finding more clients so that you can build that practice?
That is a great question. I could defer to Avalara, who is a sales and marketing powerhouse. Yes. Yeah, no doubt.
Yes, it's definitely an area we're looking to invest more in to really enable accountants and bookkeepers to market their services a lot better. But it really comes down to what service are you offering, and some best practices around not only messaging, but pricing and bundling, and how do you make it affordable for your clients. So there's a lot of best practices around what should you be charging, how should you be marketing your services, what messaging should you use. So there's a lot of best practices that you would focus on.
For us, we do a lot of educational material. We have a call that's called a What's Next call, right? Kind of a cheesy name. It's a free consultation, but if you tell your client, contact me for a free consultation, they feel like, it's probably just a hard sales call. But this is actually one of those moments where we collaborate with you, try to understand your situation, you learn a little bit about us. At the end of a call like that, if you've gained some confidence and peace of mind, but you're not really moving in a direction of what we do, we're perfectly happy with that because we like to help people, right? But so it's a combination of education, collaborating, messaging. We have a podcast, we have a blog, we have a newsletter. Obviously, all of the regular formats of referral business. We work closely with CPAs and accountants in assisting them and helping them as it relates to SALT. And so there's a broad net, but I think you want to get involved and network while you're getting educated, and also be willing to collaborate and offer education when it comes to the issues. People appreciate that, I think.
Yeah. And I think together it's just hearing both of you, it's definitely just trying to figure out what the client needs, what they want, and being able to structure that for them. It's different when you have just one offering and you're trying to shove that and make it fit with everybody, but every business is different. And you've got to be able to understand what they're looking for, what they need, to be able to provide something that fits them. So if you're open to that, it's not difficult. It's easy to get that business.
Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah.
We are going to try again and show the third CPE code for this session. There it is. All right, so be sure to write that down if you're planning on collecting CPE for this session at Ensuring Success. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the future of sales tax. I mean, I don't know that we actually saw Wayfair coming, but it wasn't such a leap when the world was moving into an e-commerce area and states were losing revenue from people buying online and not paying sales tax. So is it a stretch to think beyond that? Is there another Wayfair around the corner? Is there something else we should be aware of that's going to hit us and our clients hard in the future?
I don't think Wayfair has been addressed. It's been out there for a couple of years, but some of the statistics we're talking about, when more than 90% are still not compliant, I think accountants and CPAs out there still have a lot of work to do. So I don't think we're done with Wayfair yet. There's a lot of education, there's a lot of technology adoption, a lot of consulting that we need to do to make sure people are not afraid of Wayfair, and they are addressing it, and they are trying to be compliant with it.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the next wave, so to speak, when it comes to Wayfair, and by the way, Wayfair came about not naturally. It was fast-tracked through South Dakota so that they could get a Supreme Court decision in hopes that it would rule in their favor. So there was this effort to get e-commerce, marketplace platforms on the hook, so to speak, for collecting of taxes. But the next wave is going to be what I call the enforcement wave, which is after 3 years, statute of limitations in most states are somewhere 3 or 4 years on average. As we get further away from the initiation, the effective dates of legislation in a particular state, as you get 3 years out, you're going to see more letters, more notices, more requests, imagining that sellers are not compliant, and then that can move into more aggressive audits. And so I think over the next few years, as we get 1, 2, 3, 4 years from the effective date in varying states, those states will start sending out letters, and more companies will be audited to determine if they're in compliance. So I think there will be a significant assertiveness by states that will draw in more sellers and require more opportunities to try to help people get compliant.
And do we ever see a time when all the states will agree on what's taxable?
Maybe if Congress acts.
Have we ever?
Sona, I think we had a few more minutes. I had a note here about you had some industry trend information that you wanted to share. Am I?
It's actually what we've been talking about. But the other industry trend that I do want to point out as part of the same study is that more than 50% of accountants and CPAs feel that they need to adopt technology to be able to better serve their clients. So that's also an interesting trend, that accountants realize the importance of technology adoption, and more than 50% think they need to be there.
Yeah, and I think we were discussing that a little bit at some previous sessions where some people are just, the technology leaders, and they're saying, here, clients, you must do this. And others are saying the clients are coming to them and being like, hey, you need to help me. They go to their CPA for everything, and they're expecting them to be leaders, and they're not. So that's interesting.
Interesting thing is that both the client and the accountant have the same challenge, which is, how do I do this in an automated way because the manual process no longer works? So it's the same challenge, and they're both trying to adopt the cloud technology to be able to do it effectively.
That's well put like that, because it's an expansion of responsibility on both parties, right? Again, back to the example, I've been doing a manual calculation and sending in my return for this one state for 10 years. Now I've got to figure out how to do that across 20, 30, or 40 states in Alabama, Colorado, and Louisiana, and the local jurisdictions that administer their own tax law, much less the states coming to an agreement. You've got local jurisdictions. So it's the same issue for the accountant as it is for the client of the accountant. You're in more states, and you're going to have to leverage automation if you really want to provide this as a profitable service line to help them.
We do have someone asking if, once again, could you please repeat those 3 questions
I was going to leave it to the end when you asked him his last. It's like, they're too good. Whenever someone says, I got 3 things or 5 things, they're like, please tell me one more time.
Yeah, you like to simplify because it is complicated, right? Yeah. So these are 3 questions, state by state, that every company doing business in the U.S. needs to answer.
Hold on, everyone listen now. You ready? Right? Write them down. Get your pen.
Every company needs to answer these 3 questions. It's not important that you know the answer, but you need to know the questions to ask, right? So, do I have Nexus? Physical or economic? Do I have Nexus? Number 2, is what I sell taxable? If what you sell is taxable, you need to know whether you should be collecting a tax at what rate in that state. And then the third one is, how do I sell my products or services?
Meaning on the website and brick and mortar through
right.
Amazon.
Am I the responsible party to collect that tax if I have Nexus and what I sell is taxable? You need to know whether you have that responsibility or not. And then from those 3 questions, which is what we constantly talk about on a What's Next call, then recommendations can be made on how to move forward to comply. And that's why it's called a What's Next call. Because the common question after those 3 questions is, what do I do next? Right? And that's where you can help your client know, here are some common steps that we typically take if you have a responsibility.
Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, and I would love it if any of you out there have decided as a result of this session to move into sales tax services in your firm, to let us know. I think that would be great. Sona, Keela, Jason, thank you so much. What a great session. So much good information, and I think it's food for thought for our attendees. And if you thought that was interesting, I want to know how many of you can identify what AI, blockchain, machine learning mean, and how you communicate those things to your clients, because we're going to find that out at the top of the hour in our next session. So thank you, Avalara, for sponsoring this. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you shortly.